Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to this edition of Creating the Future with me, Dr. Brent Simpson, where we dive into stories and truths and deep questions that help us shape our faith, our families, and of course, our futures. Well, we are continuing in this summer series today where we are interviewing our pastors and getting to know them and doing more than just seeing them on the stage or seeing their face on something, but actually getting to know their story a little bit. I hope that you have thoroughly enjoyed it so far. And today we have with us the illustrious, the amazing, as many people would say, the man, the myth, the legend, Pastor Ken McAnulty, who serves as our executive pastor here at Arise. So welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So we're going to interview you, get to know all about you, and hopefully, fill in some blanks of people's questions about your backstory.
All the blanks.
Let's start out with a fun question just for you. Excluding the Bible, what is your favorite book of all time? And I don't know if this is, it could also be like, what is one book every Christian should read or everybody should read? I don't know, but because I know you, and you might pull up some Star Wars books, so it might be the same. Lord of the Rings or something.
I did love Lord of the Rings. That was probably one of my favorite fiction books of all times. Nonfiction, I think the one that probably formed me the most was a book called Jesus in Power by David Pryor, which is not very well known, but it really kind of talked about how Jesus had all power, but yet he didn't always just operate in his power and throw his power around. That he operated in authority. And it really kind of shaped me to be who I am today, because I don't have to throw things around, as a Christian, even though I have the power of God residing in me, I don't have to throw it around and try to prove anything. God's authority rests in me.
That's good.
So,
That's good. So what's it called again? By who?
Jesus in Power by David Pryor.
Okay, I've never even heard of that book, so that sounds very interesting. I have to check that out.
Yep.
All right, so let's start out in the beginning. Where did you grow up? What was your childhood like? I know, you got this. If anybody cannot see it, and if you know Pastor Ken at all, he is a massive Michigan fan and all things Michigan, Detroit Lions, Detroit Tigers, all that as well. So. All right, so tell me about your childhood.
I'm a little bit mad with the Red Wings right now because their captain decided he didn't want to play for us anymore. But anyway, my childhood was a little bit wild because I grew up all over the place, was a pastor's kid, and so I was born in Petoskey, Michigan, but we quickly moved just to several places, Kalamazoo, Michigan, Grand Haven, Michigan, where I spent all of my elementary years. And then in junior high, we moved to junior high, not middle school, because that's what it was back then, moved to Wisconsin, and lived in Wisconsin until about my 10th grade year. And in high school, I ended up in 5 different schools in 3 states during my 4 years of high school. Because my parents got divorced. And so it was just a radical change for our family, just all over the country, from Wisconsin to Missouri to Florida.
Yeah. So how was your household growing up? So your dad's a pastor of some sort, but if I'm not mistaken, he wasn't a lead pastor.
He was a lead pastor.
He was a lead pastor.
Yeah.
Okay. So what was that like in your house, being a pastor's kid? Being a PK is the inside term that we would use, right?
So I mean, there were a lot of expectations there, just expectations of behavior, of being a Christian, of putting on the right thing. I describe it like this. I always felt like there was a hammer sitting over me, and that was really formative in my early years. And I've had to work through a lot of that since then. That God was sitting over me with a hammer, ready and waiting for me to mess up so that He could smash me. Because that's kind of what I felt like in my house, was that there was this waiting for you to mess up moment or spirit or attitude. And it wasn't always like that. There were great moments as well, but I would say that kind of formed me a lot.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I think a lot of times PKs, especially back in the day, hopefully, at least with us, we're trying to change that now. I don't know about others, but there's almost what the Bible would refer to as the doctrine of demons kind of thing, where you have to empower, you have to look perfect all the time and create this show as a PK, and oftentimes also the pastors, which probably is where that came from. So,
I think some of it was like, we had to leave and go to the next city over just to go see The Empire Strikes Back, as a Star Wars fan, because you couldn't go see it in the town, because if somebody saw
you in that theater. Oh my goodness!
Right. So just even little things like that were unintentional, that weren't necessarily this idea of my parents standing over me with a hammer, but it just created this impression that the hammer was always ready to drop.
That church cultural dynamic.
Yeah.
All right. So as a kid and a teenager, what were you like growing up? If we met, little Ken or teenage Ken, what were you like?
I was a nerd. I was a little bit of a know-it-all, but I was also very, very quiet. a lot of people don't know this, but I'm very much an introvert. I've always kind of been an introvert and reserved and kind of held back. I'm a firstborn, and so I carry a lot of the firstborn tendencies where, and I've had to fight some of this where I feel like I'm always right and try to, because I have 3 younger brothers, and so I'm always right and have to dominate and things like that. And so those are things that I've had to fight through and try to get healing from and stuff like that. But yeah, that's kind of who I was.
That's funny. All right, so in that childhood or whenever, but how and when did you give your life to Christ?
Oh, that was a couple of weeks ago when you did that. Once saved, always saved. No, I'm just kidding. No, I 5 years old, and we had a kids crusade. And in that kids crusade, I remember the lady's name. Her name was Miss Melody, and I remember there was a specific song that they sang, and I knew that I needed to go up and give my life to Jesus. And
that's awesome.
I was in that stage where I'd go up and I'd cry and snot and give my life to Jesus, and then I'd walk out, go to the bathroom, wipe all my tears, walk back in, and cry and snot and have to walk out, because I didn't want to be crying and seen crying and stuff like that. So I remember that, but yeah.
I love that. 5 years old. This is why kids ministry is so important.
It is. It really is. Yeah.
It does make a lasting impact. And several of our other pastors we've interviewed have talked about, from the time they can remember, which essentially means they were 5, they were 4. They don't, it's just, kids ministry is so important.
It is.
All right, what was your call to ministry then? So you gave your life to Christ, as a little boy, but at some point there's a call to get you.
Yeah, it's another moment that just stands out in my head. It was after youth camp. It was the summer between my 9th and 10th grade year, and we come back after youth camp, and youth camp was okay for me, but we get back to church, and it's a Sunday night, and my dad preached a sermon. I can't even tell you what the sermon was about, but that was, those were the days when everybody would come down to the altar, and that's just what you did.
Right.
You came down to the
There's
altar
no
and
other
spent
option.
time with God, and so I was at the altar spending time with God, and between 9th and 10th grade back then, that was your major thought was, what am I going to do with the rest of my life?
Right.
And so I asked God, God, what do you want me to do with the rest of my life? And these words just kind of came into my head. I feel like the Lord spoke them into my head, youth pastor. And so I asked him, I said, God, do you want me to be a youth pastor? And the way I describe it is like, when your kids get the right answer and you pick them up and swing them around, that's right. That's how I felt like the Lord did with me. And man, that moment has carried me through difficult times, through good times. That moment has been a guiding light to me that God called me. He spoke to me. He said, this is the direction you can go, and that I want you to go. And I'm not a youth pastor now, but he was telling me the next step. He wasn't telling me the eternal step.
Right.
So,
and that's usually the way it works. Yeah, God will call you to something, but the calling is always to serve.
Right.
We've talked about that. You serve, but you serve in different ways.
Right.
So the office has changed. The calling stays the same. So, all right. So now you have a cool story, and it's probably for another day, of just the ups and downs and the craziness of being a youth pastor and how you end up getting here, which we might talk about in a second. But so what surprised you most about being in ministry all these years? What is the thing that's like, oh wow, that was not what I thought? And you're PK, so you were around it a lot early on, so it might not be as surprising.
I knew some of the struggles. I knew some of the church politics that happened and things like that. So that didn't really surprise me. What probably surprised me the most is I met this God who I knew who was real, and I knew wanted to do miracles and could do miracles very early on. And to then meet people who were just okay with coming to church and not meeting that God. That was surprising to me. I was intense and passionate as a young minister, and I thought, man, everybody needs to meet this Jesus. Everybody needs to know him. Everybody needs to love him, and you need to experience this. And for people to just be like, no, I'm good. Like, I don't even know what to do with that. And so that was probably the most surprising thing, was just some of the apathy that I ran across.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
All right. What's one moment in ministry you'll never forget of all? And I should ask you this too. So, how long have you been in ministry? How many years at this point today?
So, I mean, on and off, mostly on since I was 22. So that would be what, 28 years?
Yeah.
Almost. Yeah. No, not. I'm adding wrong.
You're the mathematician.
28 years.
Yeah, it'd be 28. I think that's right.
28 years. Yeah.
All right. So roughly. So what's one moment in that 28 years that you'll never forget? It just marks you.
I think it was, I was asked to go do a youth camp in Idaho. And it was my very first youth camp that I had ever done. And I get up there and they found...
When you say do a youth camp for our listening audience, you were preaching the youth camp. You were the minister for the youth camp.
Yeah.
For clarity.
Yeah. And I get up there and they learned that I was from Lakeland, and that was when the Lakeland revival was going on. And so people begin to ask me questions about, oh, you're from Lakeland, and have you been to this? And I'm like, no, I actually haven't been to this. But there was an expectation in the room. And man, God just moved in such an incredible way in the room. And the Lord told me before I got there, he said, you're not to lay your hands on any person. And I said, well, God, how am I supposed to pray for people then? I mean, that's weird. It's youth camp. You lay your hands on everybody, and that's how it works. And he said, no. He said, when people tell you what they're up to be prayed for, you empower other people to pray.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I hope you are enjoying today's show, but let me take a quick time out to remind you to like and subscribe. It helps us get this content out to so many more people, as well as do me a favor and leave a comment. I always enjoy reading your comments every single week. Now, let's jump right back into this great conversation.
And it was such a cool thing that I did it. I was obedient. And I would listen to what they were being prayed for or wanted to be prayed for, and I would find somebody and pull them up, whether it be a youth leader or a youth pastor, pull them up and say, okay, put your hands on them, and I want you to begin to pray. This is what we're praying for. And then I was instructed by the Lord to walk away. And it was the coolest thing. I would walk away and start listening to the next person, and then all of a sudden they would start yelling and screaming because God was doing something and he showed up.
That's awesome.
And it was the coolest thing because it was like God saying, I'm using you, but I don't need you to do the miracle.
Right.
Because he doesn't. And so it was just, it really kind of formed me. It really shaped kind of who I am.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Delegated anointing. I love that.
Yeah.
All right. So then, all these years later, and you served in multiple ways. You were a youth pastor. You were an evangelist. You served in, you were a teacher for the Christian school teaching Bible and math. So how did you end up at Arise all these years later?
That's a funny story. It's a really cool story. So just went through a lot of hurt and a lot of woundedness in ministry, and found myself teaching, and was still looking at the pages of trying to be in full-time ministry, and was always the bridesmaid, never the bride kind of thing. Came second place several positions, and I just remember sitting in my classroom at the school and looking at the site where there were jobs posted. I'm like, no, I'm happy here. I'm ministering, I'm teaching, Bible and math. The students love me. I'm doing what God's called me to do. So God, and I said these words, I said, God, I'm satisfied, I'm content. And so I'm not looking anymore. I'm shutting the website off. I'm not looking anymore. So God, if you want me back in full-time ministry, vocational ministry, you're going to have to do it without a resume, without an interview, because I'm not putting a resume in. I won't ever do that. Right. So you're going to have to do this somehow like that, without a resume, without an interview. And I shut it, and I've never opened that site ever again. And then we were attending at Arise, and you called me up and asked my wife and I to go to lunch with you guys at Carrabba's. Don't tell anybody, but at Carrabba's. And we get in there, and your first statement after we sit down was, I'm going to rip the Band-Aid off, but without a resume, without an interview, I want to offer you a job as our connections pastor. Never done this before, never done it again. And then you said it again, but without a resume and without an interview. It was just like the Lord just kind of tapping on my forehead saying, I heard you. But I'm still calling you. And so it was really kind of a cool moment. My wife didn't even know. So we got back in the car, and she's like, so what do you think? And I tell her the story, and she goes, well, I guess we know what to think then. I guess God's saying do it. And I'm like, I don't know how we couldn't.
Awesome.
So
That's so cool. That's so cool. And just for clarity, so you, we knew each other prior.
We did, yeah.
Because it's not because that could sound bad. Like I just walked up to a stranger and said, give you a job. So you were a youth leader with me at our previous church, so I'd known you from then. Then you came to Arise, and then you took over the Arise School of Arise School of Ministry.
We built it together.
Yeah. We really started it together, and you were the key person, not me. I was the visionary. You're the one that made it happen. So you were already serving at a high level position when that happened, and I knew you for years, so it wasn't a normal...
Right. Yeah.
Everybody watching shouldn't get their hopes up every time I have a lunch and they're like, oh, is he going to offer me a job?
Pastor Brent walks by, he might offer me.
Right. It doesn't always work that way. That was a God thing and a beautiful, beautiful God thing. So you started out as a connection pastor and then quickly moved to executive pastor, right? Okay. So the question would be, what does an executive pastor do? Because there's a lot of people that are like, what does that do? Or we could say it the way Pastor George says it, how does he say it?
Executive.
An executive pastor, which always sounds like he executes people.
Yeah, that's what I do. I execute things, and sometimes I'm just
So what does an executive pastor do?
Really, it does do that. It executes things. That's kind of what I do. Is I execute the vision that you've put in. The way that you say it is, I kind of run the church so that you can be the visionary leader that God's called you to be. In a real practical sense, I manage the facilities, the finances, and the staff. So that you can be the visionary leader and hear from God and then lead us in the direction we need to go. Yeah,
I think the biblical term might be like armor bearer or something like that, but really you manage the church. Yeah. So it takes me out of some of the day-to-day stuff that would be these always consuming fires that are always going on, so that you can see the bigger picture and keep the whole organization moving forward. So
absolutely,
very, very important role. And I can say to everybody who's watching, we would not be where we are today if it was not for Pastor Ken. Very gifted in what he does. He's absolutely amazing, and so excited and just love the fact that we get to work together. And really, I mean, I would say you're one of my best friends. And so it's a fun little interview because of that. So so what do you love about serving at Arise the most?
The culture, man. The culture. I would say it's twofold. The culture. So I've been in church ministry all my life, being a pastor's kid, and I've never been in a church like Arise, where we do the things that we say. We're going to behave like the things that we put up on the wall. We're going to value the things that we say that we're going to value. And we're going to treat people in a way that's honoring. And so I've always felt like that's the way I wanted to be. But then to be able to serve at Arise and to actually do it when I've been at other churches, and it's kind of, no, you can't do that. And it's like, but this is the way God wants us to do. And then just being able to experience God's presence within the context of that. So I get the cool thing of during services, especially worship, I get to walk the aisles. And so it's this thing of walking the aisles and seeing people that I love and I know, and hugging them and ministering to them in moments, but then also having these moments where God just wrecks me in the moment too, right in the aisle, and I get to just stop and worship him and just have a moment with him, but then can turn around and go right back to doing what I was doing. So
that's so good. So good. All right, if you could sit down with one person from our church, you're having coffee, you're hanging out with them, and they walk away, what do you want them to know about Ken McAnulty?
That's a great question. I've wrestled with this one. On one hand, I want them to know that I'm just a normal person. I sit at home and play Minecraft and NCAA, and I do normal things. But on the other hand, I would want them to know that I love serving Jesus, and I love Jesus, and I love serving other people. And that those things can change their life just like it's changed my life. So
that's awesome. All right, one last just kind of fun question. What is one thing that people don't know about you probably that might surprise them? And you just said Minecraft. That always surprises people that you play video games.
It does. I love playing Minecraft, and just the take you away from the stress and the strain of what you're doing on a regular day basis. So I love doing that. Love Michigan football. But
everybody knows that.
Everybody knows that. I wear that kind of on my sleeve.
You have Michigan everywhere.
I guess I could tell you just a funny thing from my childhood. There in first grade, I got a pencil eraser stuck in my nose. I got to skip school because I got a pencil eraser stuck in my nose. And the funniest thing was I couldn't get it out. And so it's jammed way up in there. And I get in the car. My mom gets me in the car. And somehow, I guess I just had the thought of, well, what if I did this and just blow? And I blew, and the eraser comes out. And my mom gets in the car. I said, look, the eraser came out. And she goes, well, are you going to go back into school? I said, no, you can take me home now. And so I got to skip school that day because I got an eraser stuck in my nose.
That's so random. That's awesome. That's
just
awesome.
A regular guy.
Regular guy who gets erasers stuck in his nose. But it was, what, you said 6 years old. So, first grade, whatever. We were all doing that stuff.
It's right after I gave my life to Jesus.
Right.
You get a eraser stuck in your nose.
He was erasing some of those bad thoughts you had in your head or something.
Probably.
I don't know. Well, Pastor Ken, thank you so much for being on this.
Absolutely.
And everybody watching, I hope you've enjoyed it. Not just this one, but all summer as we're kind of looking through all of our pastors and getting to know them in depth and hear their stories. So thank you so much for being with us. And we look forward to seeing you guys again next week. If you haven't done it already, make sure you give it a like, a subscribe. Make sure you comment below. I'm sure Pastor Ken will see it. So if you have further questions for him, ask him in the comments.
Ask away.
And we look forward to seeing you again next week. God bless you guys.